And joining us now on our Newsmaker hotline, I had the pleasure and honor of introducing Michael Mukasey, former Bush Attorney General, at CPAC at a special panel that we had at CPAC, sponsored by Breitbart News. I got to introduce Attorney General Michael Mukasey, and now he's here joining us. Good morning, sir.
Good morning to you.
I read with great interest your article at the Wall Street Journal with the headline, "Make No Mistake, It Was Jihad." And you spell out what happened up in Boston, and you raise a lot of questions with regard to how the Obama administration is handling this as basically what seems to be an isolated criminal event versus something a little bit more nefarious. Can you delve into that a little bit?
Well, that's precisely right. This is the jihad postings on both of their websites, the radicalization, the fact that this was undertaken apparently as, or obviously I should say, as a suicide attempt, because they clearly had no intention of getting away alive. They just wanted to set up as much destruction as they could. After they completed the bombing, they went out and killed a police officer and engaged in a running bomb battle with the police. That's not the act of somebody who wants to get away. The bombs themselves could not have been built without expert help, and it shrieks of something that's got a much wider involvement.
So given that, do you think that because they're being treated like criminals, because the current suspect was Mirandized, are we not getting as much information as we could about this to prevent further attacks?
Yes, we're not getting as much information as we could. The FBI finally, after the president abolished the CIA's interrogation program, which was entirely lawful, he abolished it. He promised he would set up a special called high-value interrogation group at the FBI to question people. It wasn't set up within a year. Remember, the underwear bomber was captured over Detroit, and he was Mirandized, so they lost that opportunity. Finally, it was set up. They were questioning the current suspect, and lo and behold, in comes a federal magistrate judge and a prosecutor to interrupt the interrogation. They could have gotten a tremendous amount, and there was absolutely no requirement that what was done be done.
Well, if you were still the Attorney General, how would you have handled it?
I would have handled it by the case law in this area says that essentially that you have to start the judicial process within 48 hours of an arrest that's made without a warrant. So what you do is you go to a judge and you get a warrant. That means that a judge has passed on the adequacy of the evidence on the existence of what's called probable cause to support a warrant. And you can then have him questioned so long as no statement of his and no lead that you get as a result of that questioning is used to prosecute him. They didn't have to use any leads from him in order to prosecute him. They had a mountain of evidence, including pictures of him actually committing the crime and his confession to the people whose car he stole. What they needed was intelligence information. If you keep that isolated from the prosecution, you can question them really for as long as is necessary.
So that's what we've lost here, the ability to find out more about where they came from, who they might have trained with, that kind of stuff.
You know, my own view is that if we had somebody in charge who had a bit of brass, we needn't have lost that, because they can go back, in my view, anytime and question him without the presence of his lawyer for intelligence purposes. He has a lawyer who is required to represent him in his criminal case. But if you're not using the information in his criminal case, he isn't entitled to a lawyer during that kind of questioning any more than he's entitled to a lawyer to draw his will or close a sale of his home.
Attorney General Michael Mukasey is our guest, and we saw Vice President Joe Biden go out and almost in a mocking way refer to these guys as knockoff jihadis, knockoff Al-Qaeda, and it seems like we're getting a message that we don't need to be worried about anything larger at play here. These guys were just acting alone, and yes, maybe they posted stuff on websites, but it really had nothing to do with a larger global war on terror. What do you see in this case that makes you think otherwise?
Look at the bombs that they built are of real concern, because that's not entry-level work. You don't get two bombs like that to go off nearly simultaneously by reading instructions off a magazine. In addition, the triggering device apparently was not of the sort described in this online magazine. So somebody helped them. And it used to be believed that we couldn't have suicide attacks in the United States because you need a network of people, emotional support, spiritual support, in order to keep focused on a horrid deed like that, which they don't regard, of course, as suicide, but as martyrdom. Here, that wisdom went out the window, because these guys, again, were clearly on a suicide mission.
All right, new topic. There seems to be sort of a disconnect once again, between the CIA and the FBI. Both of them got sort of tipped off by the Russians that we should watch this other guy, and then it fell through the cracks. You were there as they were trying to fix that problem. When you read all the accounts of what happened, what do you draw from it?
What I draw from it is that it's very hard to break people of habits and to break people of a kind of territorial approach to facts. I mean, when you have intelligence, when you know something that nobody else knows, that gives you a certain level of control. Getting people to share that kind of information, which might necessarily involve sharing the credit. You might turn the information over to another agency, they make the arrest, and your agency doesn't get publicity. I'm not saying that was what was at stake here, but that kind of instinct is still present, and it's very difficult to get rid of.
Attorney General Mukasey, we just opened the Bush Library last week, and there was a lot of talk about the Bush presidency. You were there. You were his Attorney General. You got to see him in action. I wonder if you can take a moment to sort of reflect on that, especially in light of this latest terror attack, considering the fact that the war on terror was such a big part of the Bush legacy.
He was an enormously intelligent man, wonderfully focused. And the sort of the mockery of him as somebody who doesn't know what he's doing or whatever is ridiculous. I mean, I saw him walk into a meeting really devoted to a national security issue, full of at least a half dozen very heavy people, and I don't include myself. Everybody, we all thought we were there to confirm a particular decision. About a minute and a half into the conversation, he asked 3 questions, and the focus turned 180 degrees. We were going to do X when we walked in, decided to do non-X by the time we walked out because of the questions that he asked. He gave us the Patriot Act. He led the fight for the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. He put the tools in the hands of any president who's willing to use them. And I hope he's remembered for that, because that's what he contributed.
Are you worried that the current president has systematically dismantled so much of that?
He's tried to dismantle it. What I really concern myself about is that he doesn't seem inclined to use the tools. If I were a basketball coach, I would say his head's not in the game.
All right. Michael Mukasey, Attorney General under President George W. Bush, thank you so much for joining us this morning. You've given us a lot of food for thought.